Is Friday. Welcome to Frontline, 6 o'clock here on the East Coast. And sadly, 3i Atlas passed closest to Earth last night and did not usher in the intergalactic boogaloo for me. But we start tonight with some breaking news. The Justice Department released some of the Epstein files. And what did I say the other day? Epstein files, they're set to be released Friday. And I'm going to go on the record and say they're probably going to, someone's probably going to declare war or something to do anything they can to not release these on Friday. And what happened today? Like an hour after the files were released, reports began rolling in of us launching airstrikes in Syria against ISIS. Now, they're saying it's as a response to the 2 service members that were killed last weekend. We're going to have more on this later in the show. Also, President Trump today making a major announcement from the White House on lowering drug and pharmaceutical costs. The president heading to North Carolina tonight. Keep it here on Newsmax. We're going to be covering it here. And surprising news from New York. Elise Stefanik, who's been really vocal about being able to win this campaign, turned around and suspended her campaign for governor. She also announced that she's not going to be running for re-election next year. Okay. But first, diversity is not our greatest strength, and the last 150 years have proved that reverse racism is not the answer to past racism. Let's do this. Okay. Finally, the U.S. government has grasped the notion that if you prioritize, hire, or favor someone for their race, then you're in fact discriminating against someone else for not being that particular race, including if you're white. And this is the conservative message, folks. Any discrimination for any reason is wrong and bad. But the liberal narrative that has been rammed down our throats since Barack Obama is if there is inequity, then there is inequality. And liberals believe we must hold some others down to push others ahead. In liberals' view, because more white people succeed, white people are somehow bad and society is somehow racist, and that black people are the victims, which that point of view is racist. That hurts every race, all the race relations. They plummeted during the first black president because of that narrative that was pushed. And the EEOC, the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission, has now launched an initiative for white people to be able to report and potentially recoup damages if they believe that they were not given the job for being white, or for, a less qualified non-white applicant was appointed or promoted in front of them.
The EEOC is committed to identifying, attacking, and eliminating all forms of race and sex discrimination, including against white male applicants and employees.
The days of white discrimination and DEI garbage are over because 60% of the country, being white, are tired of being told that we're the problem or that we're bad.
This is a typical case of a white womaning, right? So we see the disrespect, we see the privilege.
White women have taken an active role in the maintenance of white supremacy.
He's just a white guy. He doesn't matter.
You don't get to mansplain right now, Mark.
And I'm the white guy in the panel to say that, so I'll shut up now.
We have stood by to see mediocre, mealy-mouthed, snowflake white men who are incapable of taking critique.
They need to talk to the Beckys, because Becky's has always been a term. Becky's been a term around since, the 80s for these white women. So they need to look to the Beckys, see what the Beckys did, and they need to sit down somewhere.
Now, look, any of those clips, take out white, insert black, in any one of those sound bites, and if it sounds racist then, guess what? It's racist how they said it too. Now, the solution to the lack of one race being adequately represented in whatever subject or field is not to hold white people or any people back and promote less qualified people simply for their skin color. It's just not. You can't tell me that this doesn't happen either because, and I always bring the receipts, the Supreme Court has ruled on a case that proves it does, and they sided with the white people who were definitively discriminated against. I wrote about this a little bit a while ago in my book, Battle on the Home Front, back in 2012. And this is, weird. Yeah, the liberal media never told you about this one. Hold my beer while I rain on the DEI movement. In 2003, the city of New Haven, Connecticut, 20 city firefighters, 19 white and 1 Hispanic, all took the promotion test and scored high enough to be eligible for the promotion. However, none of them were actually promoted. In fact, New Haven invalidated the entire test results solely because not a single black applicant scored high enough to be eligible for the promotion. The 20 non-black firefighters sued, working their way through the courts until it was finally heard in 2009 by the Supreme Court, which sided with them, actually overruling Sotomayor, who was a lower judge at the time. But they ruled that New Haven did, in fact, violate Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, discriminating against those firefighters based on the color of their skin. See, this is what the DEI movement fails to understand, that if you hold back qualified applicants in order to make a magical number of another race hold those positions, it doesn't end racism. It actually perpetuates it. It creates animosity, but it also makes everybody question whether or not a person who received a promotion of a minority status actually deserved it. Look, is there some racism in this country? Sure, but it doesn't exist to nearly the extent that the left claims it does. So they could just stop. But the left has perpetuated this narrative that America is somehow a racist nation, to use it as a currency, saying that there's systemic racism.
It isn't just about police reform. It's about dealing with the deep wound of systemic racism in this nation.
There's no systemic racism left in America. There is no law that perpetuates any superiority based on race. That's the definition of systemic, root word system. One can argue that America is actually the least racist nation in the history of the world. You see, nearly every empire, territory, or kingdom going back to the beginning of, time, has had slavery based on demographics in one form or another. Almost. I mean, there are some exceptions. But only here in America do we still blame something that not a single person alive today has experienced for the conditions of said group.
You tell me which white men were dragged out of their homes. You tell me which one of them got dragged all the way across an ocean and told that you are going to go and work. We are going to steal your wives. We are going to rape your wives. That didn't happen. That is oppression.
She has no firsthand experience of any of that. And yet California this week funded a reparations account that will be paid to people that have never been slaves, in large part funded by people who never owned slaves, in a state where slavery was never legal. And I will debate the merits of this with anyone, including Jasmine Crockett, at any time, anywhere. But all the race baiters, they never debate the issue because they can't. When they go to court, they lose. And when they debate, they realize they have no argument other than to shout racism.
When can you decide that an act of racism has occurred? Because if you have just a statistical disparity, has an act of racism automatically occurred?
Where do you draw the line between something that might have a racial impact but is not inherently racist? Yeah. Let me move on.
Oh, yeah, let me move on, because they couldn't. The two black people on that panel were supposed to be the subject matter experts in that field, but they couldn't answer it, so he moved on. Because the argument the left has made is, because there is inequity, there must be inequality, and America is racist, and that's why black people don't achieve the same as white people. Look, I reject that notion on the sole basis that 70 years after the Civil Rights Movement, black families are currently worse off than they were before Brown versus Board of Education. Not because of racism, but because of choices in culture. And because the left has pushed minorities, especially black families, into the reliance on big government, which is why the single motherhood of black women in America has gone from 30% to 70% in 50 years. Why the median income of black families has decreased, not increased, since the Civil Rights Movement. Not to mention black unemployment is double the national unemployment number. Why 13% of the population commits over 50% of the murders, not because the justice system is racist, but because they actually commit the murders. And black children are falling farther and farther behind in school because Democrats promised mass benefits and told them that your level of outrage is a justification for whatever crime you want to commit as a substitute for the nuclear family. It's not because of racism, to Ben's point. It's because white liberals, primarily women, keep telling black people that they're victims and therefore need these programs or they will never achieve, which is a huge disservice. But it has ensured the minority vote for Democrats for decades. Just ask LBJ. Can't even read his quote on air. I would argue that is probably the only or the closest thing we have to systemic racism left in America today, perpetuated by Democrats. Look, America is not a racist country. In fact, we're the only country to wage a war against ourselves to end it at the cost of 600,000 American lives. Well, I mean, American lives that were, at the time, the ruling class. White people fought a war amongst their neighbors to free black slaves that were sold into slavery by their black African leaders. But yet, not one of those liberals has proposed reparations for the families of the soldiers that fought for the North. The families of the killed Union soldiers didn't get 40 acres and a mule, which today would be worth around $200,000 by median acreage cost. Think about that. And tell me again that America is a racist country. However uncomfortable this makes the left, the fact is that non-white people have been elevated for the last 15 years arbitrarily as part of a social justice movement that makes white liberals feel better about themselves or something. But they've held white people down for it. Minorities have had every incentive and leg up over white people. They've not been discriminated against. There's historically, there's HSBCs, there's affirmative action, race and sex-based government, no-bid government contracts, you name it, and still hasn't solved in decades the problems liberals cry about. Look at the favoritism of the Black Lives Matter movement. If you didn't post a black square on your social media, you were racist, and people were literally shunned from polite society for not going along with it. If you didn't praise Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, Eric Gardner, or the criminal George Floyd, the repeat offender who died of a fentanyl overdose while resisting arrest, if you didn't see him as the victim, you were called the racist. And corporations committed political suicide to appeal to a mob, while their leaders bought mansions from the donated money and didn't help a single black person that they claimed to love. You were allowed to attend densely populated Black Lives Matter protests and burn down cities during COVID because the social justice implication was more important than the COVID standards that they enforced on everybody else. But if you went paddleboarding alone in the ocean without a mask, you would be arrested. But when a young white immigrant woman gets stabbed in the neck by a black man in Charlotte, who says, by the way, I got that white blank, we suddenly can't mention race. It's the double standard, guys, okay? It's overwhelming. And this is the new action by the EEOC. It's trying to correct that. Race-based hiring, race-based prosecutions, favoritism, or promotions, it's all bad in any direction, just like sexism or ageism is. It should always be the best man or woman for the job based on the merits of their performance. And if it's a black, white, Hispanic, blue, green, yellow, who cares? Because the best people put out the best product, and that is the America that I fought for. Frank Ricci is a retired battalion chief of the New Haven, Connecticut Fire Department and was the lead plaintiff in that case that I just mentioned, Ricky versus DeStefano. This is something that's probably been a long time coming, sir. And I'll tell you, you're a firefighter. I want the best guy coming through, not the one that's the most diverse.
Carl, absolutely. And thank you for your service. You just want the very best there. This was always the law. What we were lacking was leadership. And that leadership has come from President Trump.
Yeah. No, but this is the thing, too. And I want to get specifically to your case. You guys, what was the initial response? How did this affect your family from start to finish? I mean, you incurred millions in legal fees.
It was New Haven 20 that Karen Torrey brought this case, and she fought hard for us. And you got to remember, this was a time in America where Eric Holder said that when it comes to race, we're a nation of cowards. That's because if you talked about identity politics, you were labeled a racist, the worst possible thing in America. So they tried to silence everybody. The entire New Haven 20, it was horrible for our families, our wives, our kids. My wife was a saint through this whole entire thing. Everybody looks at it after you won, but this isn't like professional football where you lose the big game, you can take up the fight again. When you go to the United States Supreme Court, you lose, that's it. And one of the things that's important to consider, Carl, is while we won in 2009, and then it seemed to be codified in omissions in the Harvard case, it was DEI that was eroding these victories. The law was always there, and now finally the Department of Justice is following the law. President Trump is bringing back common sense to America, and Assistant Attorney General Dillon is just doing an unbelievable job putting that vision into practice.
But I got to ask you this, though. when you won, did it make things worse or better for race relations in your department or from people you spoke to? Because I imagine it created an enormous amount of animosity.
I worked in two very socioeconomically deprived neighborhoods, a Spanish neighborhood and a black neighborhood, and my shift was very diverse. The one thing for the close-knit of the fire shift, I would assume it's just like being a Navy SEAL. The fact is you're counting on the person next to you. We never really looked at immutable characteristics. It was a minority group of minorities that were just fanning the flames of racism. I mean, today you look up my name on the Urban Dictionary, it basically talks about white privilege. So we always have that stigma, but we want the very best, and nobody should be judged based off an immutable characteristic. And one of the most pernicious things about my case that the left never wanted to talk about was that they not only took away promotions from qualified whites and Hispanics, they took away qualified promotions from some African Americans and essentially told them, I'm sorry, there's not enough of you. So it's all about statistics. And the proof was in the pudding. While the media wouldn't put that out, when we got promoted, 3 qualified African Americans were promoted and 2 qualified Hispanics. But that didn't fit the narrative.
Yeah. No, I mean, but that's the real world implications of when they try to take things to the nth power and hold people back to push others ahead. Frank Ricci, appreciate your fight on this. And I hope we do honestly heal as a nation from stuff like this. But thank you.
Carl, you've been in the forefront of this from the very beginning. Thank you for your service. Thank you, and Merry Christmas to everyone.
You as well, sir. All right, coming up, the hunt for the Brown University killer has come to an end after officials found his dead body at a storage unit in New Hampshire. Not even close. So we're going to discuss the new details about the Portuguese national later in the show. But first, a massive scandal out of Fulton County, Georgia is reigniting questions about election integrity. I hate to say I told you so. Deets next.
Whenever news breaks.
A lot of destruction there. It was really the front lines in the battle.
And wherever it happens.
Humanitarian corridors opened up this morning.
We're trying to go rescue a 96-year-old lady that doesn't have anybody to take care of her.
They're using ingenuity. They refuse to give up.
That's incoming fire. Come on. Yeah, let's get down here.
Newsmax is there for you.
You might take something for your heart. You might get support for your joints, or even use something for your digestion. So why wouldn't you take something for the most important part of you? Your brain. People all over the country take Prevagen for their brain. In fact, Prevagen has been the #1 selling brain supplement nationwide for over 10 years. The most important supplement for the most important part of you. Try Prevagen for your brain today.
Get ready to deck the walls with 14 days of deals at Cabinets to Go. Now through December 31st, there's nowhere better to save up to 70% on stunning kitchen cabinet collections. Then bring home even more for the holidays with deals every day on kitchen accents, accessories, and finishing touches. Plus a free 3D design consultation to help you get started. Wrap up your new kitchen before the new year for less at Cabinets to Go. Designed to wow. Sale ends December 31st.
Talking to people today about their retirement accounts. Sir, excuse me.
Yeah.
Do you have a retirement account?
Yeah, I've got a TSP from my old government job.
How's that doing?
I'm forgetting about it. I can't contribute to it. There are fees to get the funds, and the investment options are limited, so the money's just stuck.
How about a gold IRA?
I can do that?
Absolutely. You can roll it into a gold IRA, and you have all the same tax advantages as a TSP, but with more flexibility. And you can put physical gold and silver in your retirement account.
I'm taking control with Noble Gold Investments.
Your retirement, your rules. Noble Gold.
All right, breaking news an hour after the Epstein files came out, and we came on air tonight, the U.S. announcing Operation Hawkeye strike in Syria. War Secretary Pete Hegseth saying the strikes conducted to eliminate ISIS fighters, infrastructure, and weapon sites. Hegseth saying this is not the beginning of a war. It is a declaration of vengeance. General Blaine Holt, Colonel Tony Shaffer. All right, General, I like the notion that he came right out and said, not a war, we're just knocking out some stuff.
You got to have a cost imposition. Anything like that happens to our forces. And that is not just an anti-ISIS message. That is for around the entire globe. You put a paw on somebody in our country who wears a uniform, it's coming. And it needs to stay that way because we call that deterrence.
Yeah. Well, Tony, the other thing, too, is this maybe they forgot over the last 4 years, but we do actually have a pretty kick-tail military.
Yeah. Well, this area, we've had to do a number of sorties of this type before. So precision strikes is nothing new, especially in this region. What is very important to Blaine's point, Carl, is to be credible when we say we're going to do something. So President Trump said there's going to be a cost for what happened. That cost has now been paid. I don't think we're done. I think you're going to see more of this. And also, this is a message to al-Jilani. Because al-Jilani, the president of Syria, has to understand, he's a former member of ISIS, Carl, that we're serious here. So if he can't control his military, if he can't govern Syria, there's going to be consequences to him as well.
Yes. And
FAFO.
Yeah, and it rhymes with parking lots. All right. Tony Shaffer, General Blaine Holt, we appreciate it very much.
Thanks, Carl.
All right. Well. What do we have here? Sure, it took 5 years, but look, I'll take it. Fulton County, Georgia, has finally admitted that they certified 315,000 early votes without signing off on the vote tabulation tapes, which are critical to the certification process. And get this, Georgia law requires poll workers to sign these tabulation tapes at the end of each election day, and they didn't do that. But we were told in 2020 that it was the safest, most secure, accountable election ever in the history of the world, right? And remember when they tried to throw Trump and several others in jail in that county for questioning the integrity of that Georgia election. Yeah, how about that? Senior elections correspondent at the Federalist, MD Kittle. Where are the arrests on this one, sir?
Good question. Accountability is in short supply, of course, from a lot of things that have happened in the auto pen presidency of Joe Biden. But this story was broken by my colleague, Brianna Lyman, and it really does get into the fact that what Molly Hemingway, editor-in-chief of the Federalist, has written, the election of 2020 was rigged, and Fulton County was one of the epicenters of that.
Well, but that's the thing. You have people like Rudy Giuliani, okay? Obviously this did result. The one good thing out of this whole thing is we did get that beautiful mugshot of Donald Trump up there that is now framed right outside the Oval Office. But I mean, it's just like I look at this and I look at Congress. I'm like, guys, can you just pass one election law? Just one.
Yeah, good point, because how long have we been fighting for the SAVE Act? That's just a basic acknowledgement that you have to be a U.S. citizen to vote in U.S. elections. Yet we have Democrats who do not want to do that because clearly they would like to see illegal immigrants vote in elections. And unfortunately, we have some Republicans who are weak-kneed about all of this, and they're not making that a priority. And if you don't make those policies, those laws a priority, you're going to get in 2026 and 28 what you got in 20.
Yeah, and that's the exact thing. And there are people who are still indicted. There's people, even Tina Peters is in jail in Colorado for, trying to expose this stuff. It's like the hammer of the Justice Department came down on these people. But here's another example, okay? And this is what I'm talking about. California, okay? Proposition 50. Passed in San Luis Obispo by 11,000 votes. Turns out they had 12,000 ineligible voters on their voter roll. San Diego County had 221,000 inactive voters. Proposition 51 by 229,000 votes. San Bernardino County reported 86,000 ineligible voters on their voter rolls. Proposition 50 passed by 80,000 votes there. Ventura County passed by 54,000 votes. And would you look at that? They had 54,000 inactive voters. I mean, this is crazy. Like, the numbers just show it.
It's a mess. It's an absolute mess. Now, I think we came a long way from 2020 and 2024 because we were dedicated. There were a lot of people, election integrity experts on the ground in Georgia and in Michigan, Wisconsin, swing states that were really watching. I hope and I pray that they do the same in 2026, or we have a lot of problems on our hands because election integrity is absolutely essential.
Yeah, I got to get to something else that's, sort of election related, but this is a big win, okay, because they've been putting these people in here to alter the census, and sometimes we found out that illegals are voting, but now the Milwaukee Circuit Judge, Hannah Dugan, who let the illegal out the back door, has been found guilty of obstruction, felony obstruction, by the way, for letting those illegals out the back door. She faces up to 5 years in jail.
She does. I highly doubt that she will see that kind of maximum sentence. That's just the way the system goes. Accountability for ye, but not for thee. And that's kind of where we're at with this. But this was a Milwaukee County judge who was convicted just yesterday of helping an illegal immigrant and his attorney evade ICE agents. Right. That's obstruction of justice. And the judge should know that.
Yeah.
But she put her activist politics, it would seem, in front of the rule of law.
It's going to be interesting to see if every single person who's ever been in her courtroom files for an appeal after this. But MD, we got to leave it right there.
Thank you, sir.
All right, coming up, the numbers show that apparently even Democrats don't like Democrats. That and more in our Culture Clash.
It's the Blue Compass RV annual Blue Tag clearance. Save over 40% on select new RVs during our largest sale of the year. Plus, every RV comes with a 1-year VIP membership to RV Complete, a $5,000 value. Visit us online or in store today.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Order online and save $45. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS. That's urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS.
They killed her brother. They shot her dog. And they took her hostage for 400 days and terrifying nights. They raped her. They put guns to her head. They starved her. These are the stories of Israeli women attacked by Hamas. If you are supporting Hamas and radicalized Palestinians, this is what you are supporting. Choose freedom, not terror.
Hi, I'm Ben Cozy. Isn't holiday travel a pain in the neck? You're cramped, uncomfortable, and forget about getting any rest. There's nothing cozy about airplane seats or hard plastic benches, and those so-called travel pillows, they just don't cut it. You don't need another travel pillow. You need Be Cozy, the world's most comfortable neck pillow. Trapped in the middle seat? Wrap Be Cozy around your neck to stop chin drop, bobblehead napping. Smashed up against the window? Fold Be Cozy over and tuck it onto your shoulder for super side support. Frequent flyer miles got you sitting aisle? Turn Be Cozy to the side for the perfect pillow position. Hey, everyone wants to be cozy, so get the world's most comfortable travel neck pillow and be cozy like me, Ben Cozy. You get to be cozy. Everyone gets a Be Cozy. Only Be Cozy has patented overlapping arms so you get double support and the comfort you need in any seat on any trip. Go online right now and get this special holiday offer. Buy one Be Cozy, get one 50% off. So don't wait. Get yours now.
Hello, everyone. It's President Donald J. Trump, and it's Trump time. Check out this red beauty. It's one of my new watches. Wear it proudly on your wrist, and everyone will know exactly what it's for, who it represents. It's really going to be something special. It's for your favorite president. Get your watch today at gettrumpwatches.com. These make a great gift. It's Trump time.
They had never rated Democrats negatively until this year. And right now, what are we talking about? We're talking about a net approval rating from Democrats. This is Democrats on Democrats. Their approval rating is actually lower than the disapproval rating. At this point, the Democratic base is so upset with Democrats.
When you look at that, even Democrats don't like Democrats. This goes to show how little Republicans have to do right now for the midterms to be a complete blowout. I mean, do anything. Voter ID, national carry reciprocity, balance the budget, or any budget for that matter. Throw the Clintons in jail or someone for any of the fraud associated with Doge. All we want is like the picture of Hillary being perp walked. You do that, dude, the midterms will be a landslide for Republicans. Mary Rooke, columnist at the Daily Caller, and Terry Schilling, president of American Principles Project. All right, Terry, I mean, like, something?
Yeah, no, look, Carl, look, I think this is great. It's promising. I do think Republicans have a lot to deliver on still.
Or
but
anything.
I do think anything. But this CNN clip, this is just them trying to scare the Democrat base into turning out and getting serious with supporting their party. There's a long way to go until Election Day. I'm not getting my hopes up. I think Republicans have a lot to deliver on before. They need to turn the economy around. If the economy's not doing better, if people don't feel like things are more affordable, I think we are going to be in some real trouble.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting. I think the election integrity would be a slam dunk for them. But,
Yes.
Mary, get this. Democrat candidate for U.S. Senate in Michigan, Mallory McMorrow, had this to say about Amy Coney Barrett and Brett Kavanaugh.
I'm a Notre Dame grad, and Amy Coney Barrett coming out of my university makes me very excited. Just on a personal level, I talked to somebody yesterday who said they saw her with Brett Kavanaugh at a tailgate last weekend. I was like, I would not be able to control myself. That would be bad. There would be beers thrown in people's faces.
And they are supposed to be, the party of civility.
Not just that, but like she wants us to take her seriously as a representative of the people or like of this country, and yet she's talking about going to a tailgate and throwing beers in people's faces.
The Supreme Court
This is
justices
embarrassing.
in their faces.
Right, exactly. This is embarrassing. We're talking about a Democratic Party that has fallen so low as to cheer on the murder of Charlie Kirk, to cheer on and ask for the death of the sitting president of the United States. They laugh about violence. They laugh about doing all these things. And yet, we can't say a word or a step out of line without being attacked and be claimed that like we're some backwards party that, falls along this like weird violence line. I feel bad for Democratic voters that this is what they have, that they have no one else to look up to or no one else to vote for. I laugh about, places like California where they have Katie Porter who like screams at reporters and does all this kind of stuff. This is just par for the course for the Democrats. There's nothing else that they have to offer.
Right. Well, Trump's also, Terry, doing big things for the 250th American Party. Announced what he's calling the Patriot Games. Roll this.
In the fall, we will host the first ever Patriot Games, an unprecedented 4-day athletic event featuring the greatest high school athletes, one young man and one young woman from each state and territory. But I promise there will be no men playing in women's sports. You're not going to see that. You'll see everything but that.
Well, Terry, the left is calling this the Hunger Games. Dude, they're not competing to the death. They're competing at athletic events for fun.
Well, we all know Democrats are not the biggest fans of sports, and it's frankly because they're very unathletic. I do, though, think that Trump needs to be very careful because we know that California is absolutely going to try and send 2 dudes to compete in this so that they can win more trophies. So we got to be careful about those blue states, Carl. They like to cheat. They
100%.
love to put men in women's sports.
Mary, I want to give you the last 30 seconds on this one.
I think this is great. I'm super patriotic, so things like this kind of get my blood pumping. I want to see this type of competition, especially among young Americans. I think this is a really great thing. I think it's hilarious that he has to stipulate the fact that we're like not going to pit men in women's sports. It makes me giggle because that's where we are. Like, that's how crazy our society is right now, where Trump's like, okay, but don't put dudes in there, okay, Minnesota, I think this is hilarious, but it's great. I think it's great for the country. I think it's something that'll bring us together, hopefully. And also, it'll bring back that state-by-state competition. I'm from Texas, and so I'm going to want my Texas people to win.
Yeah, exactly. Cheer it on, and we can bet on it on Kalishi or whatever that site is now. Bet on anything. Mary, Terry, we appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right, President Trump will be visiting North Carolina tonight, continuing his nationwide economic tour. The president looking to reassure Americans that prices are and will continue to come down. White House correspondent Mike Carter is live in Rocky Mount, North Carolina with the details, and Mike Whatley, former RNC chair and candidate now. Mike?
Yeah, he is, Carl. We're here with Michael Whatley. Look, the former chair of the RNC and now a Senate candidate here in North Carolina for the GOP. Chairman Whatley, good to see you.
Good to see you.
I can't help but notice behind us here, a big sign says lower prices, bigger paychecks. For folks right now that aren't feeling those lower prices, what do you tell them, people?
Look, help is on the way. The president was very clear when he ran. It's all about making sure that we have an economy that works for every family, not just here in North Carolina, but around the entire country. We had to endure 4 years of the worst inflation in modern history when we saw prices on housing, gasoline, groceries, and everything. And right now, what the president is doing is creating jobs. We are lowering prices, and we're making sure that the American economy is getting out of that ditch that President Biden left us in.
Yeah, you mentioned inflation. Of course, President Trump puts all the blame on President Biden for the inflation. Today, the president inviting the heads of 9 pharmaceutical companies to the White House. They're signing on to his most favored nation pledge policy, lowering prescription drug prices for Americans. We saw what the president has done with Trump accounts, energy costs down in most of the country now, gasoline under $3 a gallon. But for folks who are still wondering, boy, what lies ahead for the Trump economy in 2026? You say the president and his legacy are on the ballot in 2026. What do you mean by that?
Well, they are on the ballot. You know, we're either going to have 2 more years with him working with a Republican House and a Republican Senate to get great legislation done, like we did with the One Big Beautiful Bill, or we're going to go back to impeachments and hoaxes and investigations with a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate. Right now, the president is putting those building blocks in place for our economy, extending the Trump middle-class tax cuts, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. Those things would not be possible with Democrat House or Democratic Senate. So we need to make sure that we're in a position to get this agenda, this American First agenda done. You know, people forget. Donald Trump ran on 3 simple premises, right? Rebuild the economy, restore our borders, and make sure that America is respected again around the world. That's exactly what he's doing right now in the most transformational presidential term of our lifetimes.
Last question for you, Chairman. Michael Whatley with us here, the former head of the RNC tonight, here in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Look, Mr. Chairman, when it comes to your future, you've been endorsed by President Trump in your Senate bid. Right now, we're coming to the end of year 1 of the second Trump term. Some people are starting to question, is this a lame duck president? What do you tell those people?
This is absolutely not a lame duck president, and I am thrilled that he had asked me to get into this race, that he has endorsed me. It means so much here in North Carolina, a state that he won 3 different times in 2016, 2020, and 2024. This is a state that supports his agenda. This is a state that wants to move forward with his agenda, and I'm very excited about the potential and the opportunity when I win to be a conservative voice for North Carolina and an ally for the president.
All right. Republicans will need you in the Senate.
Yes,
Good luck
sir.
to you, sir,
Good to
next
see
year.
you.
Carl, we'll send it back to you. President's slated to speak, 9 o'clock Eastern time.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Coming up, some of the Epstein file pages have been released, but the rest will take a few weeks, even though the due date by law is today. Deets next.
Information. Truth. Is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.
We're in a very holy time of the year. We think in terms of a deliverance.
This is where she washes the dishes.
If you're ever going to allow your Christian faith to rise and to do something for God's chosen people, now is the time. This is the home of Galena. She's 96 years old.
This is what she had to eat for today.
She has 1 pot with water and wheat.
My father was killed by the Nazis, and I was an orphan. I didn't know about God. But now, in the cold, hungry nights, I pray for food to the God I've never known. There are good people that love you.
You see the tears. Scripture says joy can come in the morning, and you can be the reason.
This Hanukkah, if you will bless these hurting children of Israel, you will receive God's blessing in return.
Your urgently needed gift of only $25 will help rush a food box packed full of life-saving essentials and includes everything they need to celebrate the miracle of the Hanukkah holiday. Call, scan, or go online now.
I'm not exaggerating when I tell you, I don't know how much longer she could have waited for us to come.
I can't even grow my food anymore. What will happen to me? I'm doomed to starve.
Tens of thousands of elderly Holocaust survivors in the former Soviet Union are living in extreme poverty, hungry, and forgotten. But through the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, we can bring them hope.
Eggs. It's my favorite food. May you be blessed.
You say to them, we see you and we're here to help.
Please don't delay. Call, scan, or go online now.
There's nothing worse than losing your dog before their time.
That's why I created Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, designed to help dogs with everything from digestive issues to itching, even moving better.
Nature's Blend works because it's freeze-dried. So instead of destroying the nutrients with high heat, they all get right into your dog's body.
Take it from a veterinarian with over 50 years of experience saving dogs' lives. I have never seen a food make this much impact on a dog's health.
For a limited time, get up to 54% off Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, plus a free gift with our special TV offer. Call or go to drmartypets.com/TV.
Healthy aging support starts here with the innovative nitric oxide science pioneered by Human, supporting your body from the heart out through circulation, blood flow, blood pressure, and energy. Results you can feel, science you can trust. Get started today at livehuman.com.
From our homes to our businesses, staying safe online has never been more important. PCmatic protects against viruses, ransomware, and scams. And unlike the others, PCmatic is proudly made in America and trusted nationwide. Whether you're protecting your family photos, your company's data, or critical government systems, PCmatic has you covered. Simple and affordable. PCmatic, trusted to protect America's computers. Visit PCmatic.com today.
All right, today, several 100,000 pages of the Epstein files were released. Many of them were completely black. But Todd Blanche says that more are going to be coming over the next couple weeks. I mean, perhaps the Deputy Attorney General should go back and reread the law because today was the due date. If the Republican DOJ has driven me to agree with the Democrats, something is wrong here because the Democrats are even upset about this. Representative Tim Burchett here, sir, from Tennessee. All right, I look at this. It's like this was a layup, and yet you have entire segments of pages, tens of pages in a row, completely redacted.
Yeah. A lot of it has to do with there's several of the ladies that don't want their names released. They were young girls. We were in a closed-door meeting with Democrats and Republicans, and I wished it had been an open-door meeting, but because the ladies wanted one lady wanted secrecy, she said, you know, I had blocked this thing out in my mind, and I would like to see the files so I know what horrific activity happened to me. And I said, so you want the files released? And her attorney immediately said, no, she does not. And so that's part of the problem you've got. You've got innocent people. And there's never, look, the Democrats had it for 4 years. We've had it for 8, almost 9 months now, I guess. And there's never, I'm not going to be one of those that says we got everything because I don't think Epstein killed himself. Yeah. I mean, I think Epstein, I do not think Epstein killed himself. Right. So, I'm on the conspiracy end of this thing, but there's literally tens of thousands of pages that they're trying to release. And I get it. And I'm with you, though. I wish the heck they just throw it all out there and let's go. Let's play ball.
But they're saying that there's like 1,200 victims in these things. You know, Jeffrey Epstein didn't traffic 1,200 victims to himself between him and Ghislaine Maxwell. I want bracelets on people.
I want a piece of rope around their neck and hang them, literally. Maybe I'm one of the few legislators in the country that's done this, but I've held the hand of somebody who's been molested as a child. I sponsored some of the toughest laws in the country, excuse me, as a state legislator, and some of them were ruled unconstitutional. They were so tough. But the point is this, is that these folks carry a life sentence, and they're going to, and what you're going to do is, I'm afraid, Christmas morning, these things are going to come out, and there's going to be some young lady who's an adult now, has a family that's, I guess, moved on, probably in counseling. The family probably doesn't know, and there's going to be some reporters stick a microphone in their face and say, dadgummit, I want to know some details. And they're going to have to relive all this stuff. I think that's part of the problem. We're trying to protect those people. It's just an awful situation. We need to get at one of these dirt bags. I mean, this is the tip of the iceberg of what's going on in this country with you know, we have 300,000 kids disappear at the border under the Biden administration. There's a lot going on out there, brother, and there's a lot we're not being told. And I for one, want to get after them.
Yeah,
I'm over it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm a victim of this as a child myself, and that's why I give a damn about this, because I'm not going to let this slide, and I don't care who we bomb or what whoever says. I'm going to stay on this till we get those names and put some people in bracelets. Representative Tim Burchett, appreciate you being on the right side of this, sir.
God bless you, brothers. And I'll tell everybody have a happy Hanukkah and a Merry Christmas to everybody. Thank you, brother, and thank you for serving our great nation.
Thank you. All right, coming up, almost a week later, they finally caught the Brown University shooter dead in the storage unit, so they didn't really catch it. Way to go, Providence police. Next.
Hi, folks. I'd like to tell you about YRefi. Did you know that as an accredited investor, when you invest in YRefi, your interest rate is fixed? And did you know that you can invest from 1 to 5 years and you can spread your investment over those terms to best suit your needs? And you have the freedom to take your monthly interest income or reinvest it, whatever you choose. When you invest in YRefi, your interest is calculated daily, you're paid monthly, and should you need your money back early, there is a liquidity feature. Would you like more information? All you have to do is call 877-80-INVEST. That's 877-80-INVEST, or log on to investyrrefi.com. That's investyrrefi.com for complete details. And make sure you review the private placement memorandum and scan this QR code to view the disclosure at your leisure. YRefi, investing in America's future.
Samaritan's Purse is ready to show the love of Christ to people in the most difficult circumstances. But we can't go without you. With your support, we can build homes, heal hearts, provide critical relief, and bring hope to a world in need. Donate now at SamaritansPurse.org. Let's get to work in Jesus' name.
Patriots. America was built by people who believed in something greater than themselves, something worth protecting. Today, one of America's top growing industries is political campaigns, a multi-billion-dollar movement powered by tech, data, and the American people. Meet FullPack, a tech platform trusted by thousands of campaigns nationwide to connect directly with voters. FullPack is expected to begin trading on NASDAQ soon, under the ticker GOTV for Get Out the Vote. But before we begin trading, we're offering a limited number of shares to patriots like you for $5 each, providing your portfolio exposure to this fast-growing market. Capitalism helped build America into the shining beacon on the hill. Now you can own a stake in the heartbeat of America. Visit gotv.com/invest or call 8777-30-GOTV to learn more.
Radical jihadists are not done. Iran promises death to America. They've built sleeper terror cells in the U.S. They support terror groups out to destroy Israel, including Hamas, whose founding charter calls for Islam to dominate the world.
The young people have been educated to believe that the most sacred thing they do is stab a Christian in the heart.
The only democracy in the Middle East that supports religious freedom is Israel. Standing for freedom, not terror.
Well, the suspect in the Brown University shooting has been found dead. Police say the man behind both the Brown University shooting and the murder of an MIT professor was found dead in New Hampshire, after a 6-day manhunt. It was 48-year-old Claudio Manuel Neves Valente, a Portuguese national, was part of the visa lottery system, by the way, was found in a storage unit in Salem, New Hampshire after he fled the scene in a rental car and then killed himself. It was a homeless man who sleeps in the Brown University building where the shooting happened. I mean, that sounds super secure, and said he had a strange encounter with the suspect earlier in the day of the shooting. The homeless man then posted about the encounter on Reddit. Why is a homeless guy posting on Reddit? And then he came forward once police released this photo of him. He wrote on Reddit, quote, "I'm being dead serious. The police need to look into gray Nissan with Florida plates, possibly a rental. That was the car he was driving." Kind of weird that the online theories solved this case after the authorities told the public to leave it to the authorities while also asking for help.
And I would leave it to us to identify persons of interest and let us run them down. What the public can do for us today is help us figure out who this guy is.
Maybe if you listen to the public and the online theories, you could have caught this guy alive or sooner. Washington Times legal reporter Alex Swoyer and president of 917 Strategy Sarah Selip. Alex, what?
So crazy. This has been one of those stories that you just can't make up, right? This is one of the reasons I went into journalism and the law. It's just, they're crazy. The facts just, speak for themselves. So many things as a lawyer I think of here. First of all, I'm waiting for some lawsuits to be filed, okay? Talk about negligence, the absence of security cameras. That was something that has even been brought up to the president of the university, who said that she kind of backed off of the need to put more in there. One, it could be a deterrence. Two, it could have helped capture this person sooner rather than him taking his own life, right? The other aspect of this is what you just brought up. The homeless man sleeping in a school building. Talk about the safety at risk of the students there. That's another problem. And in my research about any sort of lawsuits that have already been filed, there is one actually by the ACLU of Rhode Island. They have actually gone after the university for not disclosing the police reports. The university has claimed that their police are not a public agency like we think of a public police department, and so they don't have to put forth those police reports, which is a huge problem. This is part of the accountability. They need to give answers, and I'm thinking we're going to have some lawsuits that might shed some light.
But Sarah, here's the other thing. The entire situation, the investigation, just shows how bad this was totally whiffed by these people. But the Brown University and the Providence Police Department, they don't even have cameras running on their cruisers and things like that.
It's wild. I mean, you look at it and you think to yourself, look, Reddit with a true crime theory yet again. And what's funny to me about it is that they argue that Brown University, specifically the buildings, are too old to have any sort of security camera, when if you look into it, on the other side of the world, there are buildings from like 5000 BC that are able to accommodate security cameras. It's wild. But it just proves to you, you don't have to be a detective. You just need internet access.
No, they have like security cameras on the pyramids.
Oh, and let's not forget about the fact that the president of the school has dozens of security cameras for herself.
Right, and they're making $4 million. Real quick, Alex, the lawsuit, what's the basis?
Well, so I would think that there could be an argument in terms of negligence, a duty to the students to keep them safe, a breach of that duty. The causation, of course, is that breached. There was injuries. Those are the damages. And therefore, there could be a recovery. I also think one other aspect of this is the first suspect that was identified. I think that ID might have been leaked.
Yeah.
That individual, if his name was out there, I'd be looking at defamation lawsuits. I mean, think about the issue with that.
It could be. Sarah, Alex, I got out of time. I got to leave it right there. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, before we go, setting an age-old debate next.
The press won't report the real story.
The American people are actually very smart.
Ridiculous statements.
These guys are just plain weird.
Actual scandals.
Even the immunity decision. I mean, that decision was so misreported.
That's my job, and I aim to do it every night.
Do you have a yo-yo smile? Sometimes yellow, sometimes white. It's a constant battle between everyday stains and whitening treatments. Until now, get Smile Actives, the daily teeth whitening breakthrough that gives you a more youthful smile and helps you keep it.
At 43 years old, I don't mess around with products that waste my time. Smile Actives is easy, and it works. No gloopy trays, no messy strips. Just add a little bit on top of your toothpaste when you brush your teeth. And ta-da, white teeth.
Just add Smile Actives to your favorite toothpaste and watch the magic happen. Our patented Polyclean microfoam lifts away deep stains for a dramatically younger and whiter smile.
You have a choice. You can have those yellow teeth and just be old Nana or Pop-Pop, or you can be smiling and dazzling and full of confidence. I love my white teeth.
Scan, click, or call for your whitest smile yet. And if you order right now, we'll double your whitening free. Get an extra Smile Actives as our free gift to you, but only while supplies last.
I drink coffee
every day. I started noticing that my teeth were not as bright as I'd like them to be, a little dingy. The Smile Active, it works. Got your boy gleaming.
100% of users saw whiter teeth. Smile Actives lifts away even the toughest stains from coffee, wine, and food, gently restoring your bright, youthful smile. Plus, it's safe for veneers, crowns, and dentures.
It's really a no-brainer if you want to whiten your teeth.
Clinically shown to brighten your teeth 5 shades whiter in just 7 days.
If you could use something so easy like Smile Actives to take yellow teeth to white teeth, why wouldn't you?
Act now. Get Smile Actives for just $24.95 and we'll double your order free. But hurry, this deal won't last. Smile Actives is guaranteed to work. Whiten your teeth or get your money back. No questions asked. Don't wait. Get Smile Actives for just $24.95 and we'll send you a second bottle absolutely free. That's free shipping, a free extra bottle. That's an incredible 58% savings. Scan the code, go to smileactives.com or call to get your beautiful whiter smile now.
Invest in Ukraine now. Ukraine is rebuilding, innovating, and shaping the future. Because Ukraine is the potential. Kyivstar is Ukraine's leading digital operator. Invests in Ukraine's connectivity, entertainment, ride-hailing, healthcare, and innovation. It's time to think opportunity. It's time to think Ukraine now.
Joining us is Dr. Drew from the Wellness Company with advice for dealing with seasonal colds and flu. Doctor?
Cold and flu season is here, and every year you or a loved one gets sick. Your doctor can't see you. Waiting in a crowded urgent care is brutal. This is a particularly bad cold and flu season, and it's why doctors suggest every family needs an emergency medical kit. Your medical emergency kit is filled with essential prescriptions. It includes antibiotics like generic Z-Pak to get well faster, amoxicillin for pneumonia, strep throat, ear infections, plus prescriptions for nausea and UTIs, and even ivermectin. It's easy. Just match your symptoms to the prescription in your guidebook or call the telemedicine doctor standing by. Take your medication early and feel better faster. Having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care in your home. No waiting to see a doctor, no lines at the pharmacy.
Smart advice. We've shared the website and discount code below to save viewers $45. Order now and your kit will be rushed to your door. Thank you, doctor.
Now I have a machine gun. Ho, ho, ho.
Hey, yippee-ki-yay, frontrunners. That's not the words in the movie, but it's time to settle the age-old dispute. Die Hard, Christmas movie or not? Home Alone, Macaulay Culkin, who is forever linked to Christmas cinema, weighed in on this dispute this week.
Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
No, it's not. It's based around Christmas, but if it was also St. Patrick's Day, it would work.
Macaulay Culkin sleeps on a bed of lies. It is a Christmas movie. I wanted to put this debate to rest, so I weighed in and had you weigh in on social media. You did not disappoint. You guys on my Twitter poll or X poll voted overwhelmingly that Die Hard was in fact a Christmas movie, 78-22. Rob, what are your thoughts?
I think there's enough Christmas references in Die Hard to make it a Christmas movie. It's also just a fantastic movie.
It's at Nagatomi Tower for a Christmas party.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of references in the movie to Christmas. Yeah. Merry Christmas, Carl.
Hey, you too, man.
The Friday before Christmas. Good to see you.